Hello, this is Lesson 5, Part 3, Communication and Perspective. When we are in a room discussing end of life or the possibility of the end of life with a pet owner, this is an emotionally unstable circumstance. Pet owners experience a wide variety of emotions when we are talking about the death of their pet. Keep in mind this is a family member that we are talking about, and not only are we talking about the possibility of the loss of life, but we're also discussing with the pet owner about how they are the ones who are going to have to make the decision about whether or not to end the life of their pet. A lot of our job involves a lot of active listening, so we need to make sure that we have good listening skills, that we are attentively listening to what our pet owners are telling us so that we can address their emotional needs as well. You will be explaining things a lot to pet owners. You need to explain the euthanasia process in detail in a language that they can understand. That means we're explaining things in lay terminology. If there is a terminal diagnosis or some sort of physiological problem that the owner is not understanding, we need to make sure that they understand the physiology of the disease or affliction that their pet is experiencing so that they can make informed decisions about whether or not they want to euthanize and when they want to euthanize. We can't make the decision for euthanasia for a pet owner. We can provide information so that they can make an educated decision, but the decision is solely that of the pet owner. We need to make sure that we are being very careful with our body language, that we are letting pet owners know through our facial expressions and our hand positions that we are openly communicating with them and that we are encouraging them to communicate back with us. And then the entire staff participates in the euthanasia event. The receptionist is often responsible for signing consent forms, explaining the consent forms and the legal aspects. The veterinarian is responsible for explaining the disease process or affliction and then the symptoms that the pet is experiencing. And the veterinary support staff, like the vet assistants and vet techs, often go into the exam room during the procedure or before the procedure to support the pet owner and also physically restrain the animal to make smoother injection, make the injection process smoother and safer. So this is a whole staff participation event, and communication among the staff needs to be good as well because we need to make sure that we are working in emotionally supportive environments. Euthanasia can be very emotionally trying on a staff, especially if you're doing a lot of euthanasias. I spent a portion of my career working at an end-of-life care facility where my job was to guide pet owners through the end-of-life decisions, like whether or not to euthanize and when. I discussed with them terminal diagnosis and the events leading up to that, and then how to proceed after receiving a diagnosis. And then also walking them through after-death care options, like whether or not to bury or cremate their pet. What I found when I was discussing with these pet owners is that there was a lot of miscommunication that seemed to be happening at the veterinary hospital level, where pet owners were not completely understanding diagnosis, they were not completely understanding the physiological process of disease, and they were not completely understanding all of the options available to them in regards to euthanasia. So we can attribute this to two things. Either the veterinary staff has poor communication, which might be the case because we don't have a lot of communication training in our curriculums for vet tech and veterinary professions. The other complicating factor is that when we have pet owners who are extremely emotional, and euthanasia does incite a lot of emotions, pet owners, their ability to listen and hear declines. So they don't hear things that they don't want to hear, and you are telling them a lot of information that they don't want to hear. And pet owners often become angry with this information, and when we have emotional upset that includes anger, we have a shutdown or a breakdown of communication. So a lot of client dissatisfaction that I was hearing when I worked at the end-of-life care facility really seemed to stem from problems with communication. Knowing this, we need to make sure that our communication skills are exemplary because we need to make sure that we are able to communicate adequately with a population of people, our pet owners, who are extremely upset and going through large amounts of duress in the euthanasia decision-making process. We need to make sure that they are clearly understanding what we are explaining to them. We need to make sure that they are the ones making the decision for euthanasia, if that's the option that they choose to go with. Economic euthanasia is not a topic that anybody likes talking about, but the reality is that finances definitely drive veterinary decisions. So pet owners often make decisions on veterinary care based on the amount of money they are able or willing to spend on the animal. When we have poor economy, when pet owners have financial struggles within their home, a lot of times veterinary care results in euthanasia because the owner cannot afford treatment. We call this economic euthanasia, when a pet owner chooses euthanasia for their animal because they can no longer afford to treat the problem that their animal is having. Euthanasia is a guilt-ridden decision to begin with. It's not an easy decision to make, especially for your average pet owner population who have non-medical knowledge and who are relying on medical staff, our veterinary team, to explain to them the best options for their pet. So when we add in finances as being a driving factor for making these decisions, pet owners can be hugely ridden with guilt during this decision. It's our job to make sure that we offer whatever options are available, and that we explain the expected outcomes of those options. A lot of pet owners, immediately when we start talking about euthanasia, they want to go and talk to a second opinion, which is fine, and we actually encourage that. However, what we need to let pet owners know is that when we have an animal who has a terminal disease or a severe injury, a second opinion isn't going to change the fact that the body has been damaged or failed and may be beyond repair. We also need to explain the expense that goes along with seeking a second opinion or performing extenuating circumstances for treatment. That all of these things do build additional expense to the pet owner. So if that expense isn't going to make the outcome be more beneficial in the way of prolonging a healthy and pain-free life, then that might not be an expense that a pet owner can justify. Euthanasia is not a decision made by veterinary staff. We provide information so that pet owners can make educated or informed decisions. We will not always agree with the decisions that our pet owners make. We may be suggesting or recommending euthanasia and the pet owner might decline, or we might tell them that there are treatment options available and they might still choose euthanasia regardless. It's our job to respect the decision of the pet owner and then to carry out and fulfill that decision as safely and humanely as possible. The veterinarian does a lot of support during the euthanasia decision-making process. The veterinarian will come in and explain terminal diagnosis, pain and suffering, will explain options that are available to the pet owner. But then oftentimes, once the veterinarian has given the information that they provide to the pet owner, they'll often say, I'm going to step out of the room to write in your medical record, and I'll be back if you have any questions. And then the vet assistant or the vet tech are left in the room with the pet owner who has just been told that their pet is going to die. So oftentimes the vet assistant and the vet tech are asked questions by the pet owner about the diagnosis that they were just given, the prognosis that they were just given, and then options that are available to them. So often the vet assistant and the vet tech are the number one person that end up having discussions with pet owners about their pet dying. These can be very difficult and draining discussions to have, and it's our job to support pet owners through this decision-making process to make sure that they have all of the information available to them so that they can make an educated decision. It is important to remember that as veterinary professionals, we need to maintain perspective. We cannot walk in someone else's shoes, so it's difficult for us to understand someone's personal circumstances. We have no understanding of what happens behind closed doors in someone's house. So when they are telling us that they don't have money to pay for treatment, we have to respect that that is their perspective. Our job is not to judge. It's really difficult sometimes when we see people coming in with their freshly manicured nails, maybe very nicely dressed, maybe driving a very nice car. It's hard to hear that they don't have money, but we really need to maintain that that manicure might have been a gift from a friend who was trying to give them a stress-free afternoon after they've endured some sort of life difficulty. The nice clothes may have been purchased at a Goodwill or a resale shop. I mean, we never truly know what path someone is walking along life, so it's important that we remember not to be judgmental when pet owners are telling us that they cannot afford treatment that we recommend. Again, our job is not to judge. Our job is to be there to inform and support and be the respectful staff members that we are expected to be within the profession. So even though you may not agree with what a pet owner is deciding in the way of veterinary care, we need to maintain perspective that it is their decision to make.